My fiancée abandoned me for a high-flying doctor, so I took action on her shocking betrayal. The photo hit my phone while I was leaning over a stranger's chest, counting compressions out loud, 26, 27, 28, as the ambulance rocked through a pothole. Siren up, sweat stinging my eyes, I kept my rhythm and swallowed hard. I'm a paramedic. I keep time with other people's heartbeats for a living. On most days, that gives me dignity. On that day, it nearly took my breath away. We stabilized him. Airway secure, pulse thready but present. We rolled through the ER doors and handed him off. That's when the notification finally finished loading. Claire's face filled the screen, lit by rooftop lanterns, cheek pressed against a man in a tailored suit. The caption was a knife disguised as confetti. Healed hearts, healed lives. Forever starts now. My thumb shook. I zoomed in. Dr. Adrian Wells. The hospital's golden boy. The man who calls EMTs the background crew when he thinks no one is listening. I stood there in my torn gloves, the grit of the street still on them, and every plan Claire and I had made. Our cheap rings in the drawer, the list of wedding songs, the sticky notes on our fridge, fell like paper in a storm. She hadn't told me it was over. She'd told the internet it had begun. A nurse touched my shoulder and asked if I was okay. I said yes, but something old inside me was not. I want to be the guy who lets humiliation pass by unremarked, who forgives and keeps moving. But inside the break came another sound. A click, like a lock opening. There had been late study sessions, wardrobe borrowed from a friend, and barbed little jokes about dating potential. I had ignored what was in front of me to keep our picture smooth. Now the picture spoke with its own caption, and my hands, trained to steady chaos, started to steady me. This isn't a revenge story dressed up as rescue. It's about making one ethical cut, and then another, like excising a tumor with clean margins. I didn't know then how deep the growth ran, or how much of my future it had already wrapped around. But I knew this much. I would start with facts, not fury. I opened her caption, then saw the dates that broke everything. Claire and I met in a public CPR class held in the back room of a church, folding our knees on the faded carpet while a volunteer instructor adjusted plastic jaws. She laughed when the dummy's head popped off in my hands. I liked that she could laugh at anything. Back then, she was in med school and I was on the overnight shift, swapping coffee for quick calories and memorizing intersections faster than street maps. We bonded over schedules that made normal people frown. Our first date was a grocery store deli sandwich eaten on a curb. She said she loved my steadiness. I said I loved her focus. We wrote plans on the backs of receipts. Move in together, save for a small wedding, maybe rent a cabin by the lake one weekend. She tried on my thrift store jacket and called it charmingly practical. I didn't hear the practical as a downgrade until later. Friends joked about our opposites attract thing. We wore it like a badge. When she advanced to rotations, I learned the names of attending physicians. I learned how residents vanished into weeks that felt like fog. The status jokes started around then, light as feathers. You're the one people meet first, she'd say. Then the doctor does the magic. She called it teasing. I tried to accept it as a different language. There were nights we lay on my old couch while her laptop glowed and I listened to ambulance chatter, and she'd say things like, "It's cute how proud you are of the basics." The basics kept people breathing. I told myself her world was sharpening her tongue. 2 weeks before the rooftop photo, she came to a barbecue with my sister, Lena, and handed me a bottle of wine I couldn't pronounce. Our friends keep asking when I'll stop playing house, she said, smiling, and start dating potential. The bottle slipped in my fingers. Lena watched her leave early for charting. I told myself she was tired. I was the one being sensitive. I didn't yet know she had already tried on a different ring. Red flags rarely arrive like sirens. They whisper like drafts under the door. At first, it was the new wardrobe, tailored dresses with tags I recognized from ads, not our budget. A friend lent them, she said, turning in the mirror. I asked which friend. You don't know her, she replied, and the mirror swallowed my face. Then there were these study sessions that migrated from the library to a colleague's place with better Wi-Fi. The phone set face down, the ringtones muted, the half smiles at messages that she dismissed as nothing. I'm trained to assess, not accuse. I kept a notebook for my calls, and I started another in my head for Claire. Date, time, explanation, feeling. Don't be petty. I'd tell myself when the entries grew teeth. We still shared cheap takeout and half-watched movies. She still tucked her feet under my thigh on the couch like nothing in the world could move them. Maybe the pressure of rotations had built a hard shell. Maybe I needed a thicker one too. Then came the charge. $49 to a flower shop I hadn't visited. I almost ignored it until the bank texted merchant verification. I called, mild and polite. The clerk said the bouquet was delivered to a hospital office and signed for by A. Wells. My stomach lined up with the floor tiles. I closed my eyes and imagined tulips walking down a hallway while my name sat on an unpaid bill. Claire said it was a mistake. A glitch, she added. Don't make it a thing. I didn't know how to make it a thing without becoming the man I didn't want to be. So I did what we do on scene when the noise is high. I filtered. I watched for patterns, not spikes. I told myself the person in front of me mattered more than the shadow behind her. I slept badly and woke with the question I couldn't yet ask out loud. She laughed when I asked. It's a group chat, she said, flicking the phone into her bag like a trick. Don't be weird, Evan. I wasn't trying to be weird. I was trying to keep footing on a floor that tilted. At work, I lifted a patient with a broken hip and realized I was gentler with strangers than with my own questions. The ladies called me sweetheart and handed me butterscotch. Claire sent a thumbs-up emoji. The next morning, her phone lit up with a nickname I'd never seen before. Our friends insisted on a double date at a gastropub where the menus came on slate boards and the lighting made everyone look airbrushed. Claire wore a dress I'd never seen and a smile I knew too well. The one she used for rooms that graded you on entry. The conversation was safe until it wasn't. A friend bragged about a promotion, and Claire said, "Now that's real ambition." She squeezed my knee under the table like it was a condolence prize and added, "Evan's work is important too. Stability is cute." I tried to turn my laugh into a shrug. The table felt crowded with ghosts I couldn't name. She texted beneath the linen, face lit by a small blue moon. "Work stuff?" she said when I glanced down. "You wouldn't get it." I wanted to ask if the blue moon had initials. After dessert, she kissed my cheek in the parking lot and left in a rideshare that matched the color of her eyeshadow. I watched taillights bleed into the night and went home to my quiet apartment, where the radiator wheezed like an old smoker. My bank app chimed again. $89 at a boutique florist near the hospital. I opened the receipt. Card message attached. The note read, "For a heart that heals even off the clock." Signed, A.W. I sat on the edge of my mattress and pictured a doctor leaning over a vase while the city made a silk noise outside. I thought of how Claire used to keep daisies in a jar and say, "They last longer when you change the water every day." I thought of all the things I had not changed. Lena called, because she has the timing of a sister who knows when someone is swallowing rocks. "Don't beg," she said, after I stumbled through half-truths. "You have nothing to beg for." I slept with my phone face down and dreamed of sterile corridors. In the morning, my hand reached for Claire's side of the bed and found only a cold trench. On my way to the station, I stopped at the florist, held the note in my palm, and asked the clerk to confirm the name. She didn't blink. "Dr. Wells," she said, "he's generous." That evening, Claire asked if I could loan her my social security number. She came over on a Tuesday when the sky looked like wet cement and the hallway smelled faintly of garlic. She set her bag on the counter and spoke before I could ask about the number. "We want different futures," she said, like reading a diagnosis. "You're good, Evan. You're good. But I need someone who understands where I'm going." I asked where that was. She looked past my shoulder as if the answer might be printed on the fridge. "Up," she said, and I felt the floor lose a notch. There were no theatrics. She didn't confess to anything, and I didn't accuse her of everything. She packed the few things she still kept at my place. 2 sweaters, a charger, a curling iron, and left her key on the ring tray shaped like a bird. The bird looked surprised. I wanted to carry grief like a man in a movie, noble, quiet, efficient. Instead, I took a long, shaky breath and called Lena. My sister arrived with coffee and the kind of silence that makes room for what can't be said yet. "You don't have to fight to keep someone who's walking away," she told me, sitting cross-legged on the rug. "But you do have to fight for your future." We made a list. Cancel the venue we'd bookmarked, close the shared savings account, change the streaming passwords. I put my ring in a zip bag and stuck it in the freezer because cold felt honest. Friends split in their reactions. Some sent heart emojis and lines about better doors opening. A couple asked what I'd done. One suggested I hit the gym and level up, as if muscle could change a story written in hidden fields on a form. Through it all, work kept arriving like weather. I lifted, bandaged, listened, documented. Dignity is often just doing the next clear thing. 2 days later, a neighbor saw Claire at the hospital fundraiser with Dr. Wells and texted me a photo with the caption, "Guess she upgraded." My thumb hovered over the reply box and then put the phone down. I could swallow humiliation or map it. That night, a rideshare receipt proved she'd been with him while I waited home. I printed the rideshare receipt and pinned it under a magnet on my fridge, next to an expired coupon and a photo of Claire pretending to bite a donut. Evidence looks small at first. It asks you to choose it over comfort. I opened my bank statements and found misaligned travel dates, charges in 2 neighborhoods at the same time. I backtracked through my calendar and her study session texts. The puzzle pieces made their own gravity. At lunch, I asked a nurse friend about Dr. Wells. She stiffened in a way that said more than words and then softened when she saw my face. "He's brilliant," she offered, "and very visible." Visible meant photographed shaking hands with donors and quoted in hospital newsletters about excellence. Visible meant more eyes on his story than on the people who lived with the messy parts. "Be careful," she added, like someone placing a hand near a burner without touching it. That night, I scrolled Claire's Instagram stories with the volume off. A clip from a rooftop with a string quartet. A champagne flute lifted in a crowd. A blurry selfie in an elevator mirror with 2 shadows, one not mine. I cross-checked timestamps against her call logs. One day claimed she was at a mandatory seminar. The ride receipt showed her traveling in the opposite direction at the same time. Venmo displayed its own quiet poetry. Small hearts next to transfers labeled AW. Post-call treat, and I'm not a detective. I'm a man who makes sure people don't die in the 10 minutes before help arrives. But pattern recognition is a survival skill in both jobs. I began a folder named Facts and took screenshots with the same care I use placing in 4. I recorded a voicemail where Claire mentioned being on campus late, while a siren in the background matched a precinct across town. Details like that can save a life. Or a future. I didn't set out to ruin anyone. I set out to save what was mine. My name, my credit, my dignity. The folder grew, and with it, a steadying resolve I hadn't felt since the rooftop photo. A Venmo note finally spelled initials that were no longer plausible coincidence. If you want to know where a story bends, ask the people adjacent to its hero. I took an early morning off and sat in my car outside the hospital donations office, where a volunteer posted the month's gala photos on a corkboard. There was Claire in a silver dress, smiling at someone just out of frame. The caption said, "With colleagues," but the shadow on her shoulder matched a lapel I'd seen on Dr. Wells in a magazine spread. Small things aligning. A nurse friend introduced me discreetly to a surgical tech who had once dated a resident and learned how to see the seams in fancy clothes. Over coffee, she looked at my screenshots and tapped the edge of one image. "Conference badge," she said. "Those color codes don't match the dates." She explained that the badge Claire wore belonged to a different day of the symposium. I wrote it down, even though I knew I'd remember it forever. Lies are often just laziness in costume. I visited the bank on my day off and asked the manager to review every inquiry on my credit. He printed a sheet and slid it across like a lab report. A luxury apartment complex had soft-pulled my file. A private clinic financing arm had pinged it twice. I felt heat rise under my collar. "I didn't apply," I said. The manager raised his eyebrows as if surprised by weather. "Sometimes applications get started and not finished," he said. "Sometimes people test doors before they knock." An ex-assistant of Dr. Wells answered my tentative message with a single line. "Meet in the park, phones off." We sat on a bench while a child fed pigeons and told jokes to the air. The assistant spoke without names. "Reputation is the first patient," they said. "Everything else follows orders." They described a pattern of cash advances timed around fundraisers, and staff instructed to use words like optics instead of truth. The pigeons pecked at a crust. I walked home down a street lined with trees too new to make shade, the printed credit sheet folded in my back pocket like a note from a teacher. I wasn't heroic or vengeful. I was tired of being told that the basics were cute. A leasing agent left me a voicemail about verifying income for your joint application. The leasing agent assumed I knew everything. "We just need proof of income on your end," she chirped. Claire sent her side already. I asked for a copy of our application. She hesitated, then agreed to email the file with most fields redacted. What arrived was enough. My full name spelled correctly, my birth date, and an employer line with a salary that wasn't mine. Someone had turned my life into a set piece and furnished it with lies. I drove to the strip mall jeweler where Claire and I had once laughed at ring prices and promised to care more about our vows than carrots. The clerk recognized me and went solemn the way people do when they're not sure what you know. "Congratulations," he said gently, and I watched him realize the word didn't fit. I asked for a receipt lookup by card number. He found a purchase 3 weeks before the rooftop photo, paid in full with a doctor's discount code. Overlapping relationships are like overlapping schedules, manageable for a while, until the alarms stack and no one remembers which one was set first. I called Lena from my car and told her the lease, the ring, the receipts. She swore once, softly. "You're not crazy," she said. "You're careful. Keep being careful." We made another list: freeze my credit, dispute inquiries, document communication. We added, find a lawyer who talks like a human. That night, I recorded a voicemail from Claire asking whether I had seen something weird and whether we could stay mature about this. The message didn't sound scared. It sounded organized. When I didn't answer, she texted a selfie from an elevator mirror with a caption about long hours and making a difference. Behind her, a hand with a distinctive watch edged into the frame. I took a screenshot and circled the watch face. Later, I matched it to a magazine photo of Dr. Wells at another gala. When you pull one thread and the whole sweater doesn't move, it's because the thread belongs to a different sweater. I was done tugging in the dark. I scheduled a meeting at the bank and called a lawyer named Carter. Lawyer Carter spoke in sentences that stacked like clean dishes. "We'll keep this simple," he said. "Facts first, tone later." I laid out the folder: screenshots, receipts, timestamps, the lease inquiry, the jeweler's lookup, the fundraiser photos. He examined each piece like a radiologist scans films. "You're not here to hurt anyone," he said. "You're here to protect yourself." That difference matters when people start performing. He suggested we request my credit file freezes in writing, dispute the soft pulls, and send certified letters. At the bank, a manager agreed to host a neutral review of timeline discrepancies if all parties consented. "Think of it like reconciling a ledger," he said, tapping his pen. We set a date. I wrote Claire and Dr. Wells a calm message. There had been possible identity misuse. I wanted to clarify accounts before any legal misunderstanding grew. No accusations, just the practical language of a man who carries oxygen cylinders and knows how quickly air runs out. I recorded one more voicemail, this time my own, narrating the steps I'd taken and why, as if leaving a message to the future me who might question whether I'd escalated too far. "This is an ethical response," I said into the quiet of my car. "No harassment, no threats, no shouting. Just verification." I saved the memo like a talisman against the part of me that wanted to rage until the windows shook. Lena helped me rehearse answers to the questions I didn't want to hear. Are you jealous? Do you resent success? Are you trying to ruin a career? We practiced saying, "I'm protecting my name," until the sentence fit my mouth without apology. It felt like learning a new protocol, awkward, then automatic. The dates circled on my wall calendar like the eye of a small storm. The night before, I stood in my kitchen and held the ring from the freezer. The metal burned my palm. I thought of vows that had never been spoken and the way promises sometimes require witnesses to exist. We would have witnesses now, on paper, in a room, with pens. Claire replied that she and Adrian would attend if it stayed professional. 2 days before the meeting, the hospital held a fundraiser in a glass atrium that made everyone look expensive. I wasn't invited. I was on call, parked outside with the rig, because emergencies don't respect donor schedules. We were packing up after a minor fall when a security guard waved us in to grab water and enjoy the music. I almost said no. Then I saw Claire across the room, laughing with a group under a suspended sculpture shaped like a heartbeat. Dr. Adrian Wells approached me the way you approach a stain on a white shirt, politely, urgently, wanting it to disappear. "Evan, right?" he said, voice smooth as certain anesthetics. "You're the paramedic. Background crew." He glanced at my uniform and then past my shoulder, already dismissing. "I hear you've got concerns. Be careful where you point them." Reputations are fragile and courts are slow. It wasn't a thread in words. It lived between them. I felt that old urge to apologize for existing in the wrong room. He was taller and trained to talk while people listened. I was trained to listen while people bled. Lena appeared at my side as if summoned. "We're good here," she said, weighing each word. "Any clarification will happen with adults in a room, not in hallways." Her eyes were steady in a way mine hadn't been for weeks. Dr. Wells smiled like someone humoring a volunteer and sauntered back to the lighting. Outside, I leaned against the rig and felt my breath come in clean pulls, like after a long run. "He wants you small," Lena said, handing me a bottle of water. "Don't be small." A string of fireworks crackled over the river for the donors. Our city does that, dresses up for whoever is looking. I've learned to see both the sequins and the seams. At home, I listened again to the memo I'd recorded for myself. Facts first, tone later. The ring sat on the table, no longer in the freezer. I could keep being background crew in my own life, or I could chart. The next morning, Adrian's office emailed to confirm professionalism and scope of discussion. We chose a bank conference room because no one argues with a wall clock and fluorescent light. The manager printed a simple agenda: identity verification, review of credit inquiries, timeline reconciliation, action items. Lawyer Carter arrived with a legal pad and the exact pen clicks of a man who never misplaces pens. Claire and Dr. Wells came 2 minutes late, smelling like a candle labeled reassurance. Claire's eyes scanned the room and landed on the ring on the table. She didn't flinch. Dr. Wells sat as if the chair had been designed for him. "Thank you for making time," I began. My voice sounded like mine, not the thin version I'd used at the fundraiser. "There may have been mistakes with my information. I want to ensure everything is correct going forward." The manager nodded and slid copies across the table. The lease inquiry, the clinic financing pings, my written freeze requests. He spoke in banker, neutral, numbered, calm. That language saved me from the words I wanted to use. Carter asked for acknowledgement that any joint applications required my consent. Dr. Wells said, "Of course," with the weary air of a surgeon agreeing that hands should be washed. Claire asked if we could keep this humane. I said that humane begins with honesty. Lena took notes, her pencil biting into the paper. The wall clock ticked with the solemnity of a witness. We followed the agenda. The manager read dates. Carter pointed to printed screenshots. I explained the origin of each one. Claire stared at the table when the jeweler's lookup came up. "I didn't want to hurt you," she said quietly, and for a moment I saw the girl from the CPR class, laughing at a headless dummy. Then Dr. Wells leaned forward, his hand forming a steeple over 2 white teeth. "If this is about jealousy, I can refer you to support services." I picked up the ring and placed it next to the credit printout. "This is about names," I said. "Mine." The manager reached for the next page, which held 2 screenshots I hadn't yet shown in any room, not even to Lena. The notary stepped in, asked for IDs, and began stamping the binders. The screenshots were simple. Claire's elevator selfie with the edge of a distinctive watch, a magazine photo of Dr. Wells wearing the same watch, taken the same night, time-stamped by the event's hashtag. Carter narrated the alignment as if reading a recipe. Same hotel elevator, same timestamp window, same accessory. The bank manager moved to the lease file. Per our records, an application was initiated with Mr. Hale's information without a wet signature, he said. "That is not compliant." He looked up. Claire kept her eyes on the table. Dr. Wells adjusted his cuff and smiled in that tired, generous way some people use to claim the high ground. "People make mistakes," he said. "We're all under pressure." He turned to me. "I'm happy to cover any costs for the inconvenience." The word inconvenience did a slow, mocking lap around the room. Claire's breath hitched. "Adrian," she said, just his name, and it landed like a small bird hitting glass. Carter placed another document on the table, a freeze confirmation on my credit, and a letter to the clinic's financing arm requesting removal of any unauthorized inquiries. "We can handle this administratively," he said, glancing at me, "unless anyone prefers a complaint on file." The notary's stamp thunked like a gavel. The manager added, "We can also note reputational risk for the institution if misuse continues." The fluorescent light buzzed. The wall clock kept time. For the first time, Dr. Wells stopped performing. The edges of his mouth tightened, and the teeth vanished. We're done here, he said, half standing. This is beneath my time. Claire didn't rise. She stared at the ring and then at me. I didn't mean to, she began, and then closed her mouth around the part she couldn't say without breaking something she needed to keep. The room waited. I slid a printed transcript of the voicemail about staying mature across to the manager. This is my record of contact, I said. From this point, communication goes through counsel. It was the kind of sentence I had practiced until it carried no shaking in its legs. My palms were dry for the first time in weeks. Dr. Wells' phone buzzed with a notification I recognized immediately as a news alert. The alert was about a donor investigation that mentioned billing irregularities at the private clinic affiliated with Dr. Wells. It did not name him. It didn't need to. In the days after our meeting, the story spread like bleach poured on a stained shirt. Fast, bright, stinging. A photo of the rooftop engagement resurfaced under a headline about optics. People love a narrative with sparkling photographs and quiet rot. My phone filled with texts I didn't answer. Claire wrote a long message about choices and kindness and the pressure she'd felt to become someone worth looking at. I read it twice and closed my eyes on an image of the CPR class, the carpet, the plastic jaws. I wrote back that I wished her healing, that I would not discuss the past further, and that any financial rectifications would go through Carter. It felt like gently removing a splinter you'd carried for months and watching the skin smooth over. At work, a supervisor pulled me aside. "Take a day," he said. I scoffed. "This stuff hits like a truck." I declined because routine is my life raft. Still, the calls felt heavier. I found myself over-explaining to patients who thanked me too loudly, as if gratitude might patch a leak. "It's just my job," I kept saying, and it sounded both true and too small. Lena brought groceries and sat while I chopped vegetables like I was counting compressions. The social circle cracked on predictable lines. Some people drifted to the brightness of a different party. A few sent apologies couched in, "I didn't know." One friend asked if I wanted to go public, as if my life were a press release. I wanted quiet, not applause. Carter handled letters, and the bank manager filed updates. The lease inquiry was marked withdrawn. My credit froze like a lake in January. I slept better, which is to say I slept at all. When I woke, the ring no longer looked like an artifact. It looked like metal that could be sold for a decent price, and then exchanged for groceries and rent and therapy copays. The practical things. The basics Claire had called cute. A message from Claire arrived asking to meet for closure and clarity. I met her in a coffee shop near the river because public tables make private words behave. She arrived late and looked thinner, the kind of thin that comes from a diet of image. We stood awkwardly. Then Saturday, "I'm sorry," she said, eyes shiny, voice trained by 1,000 apologies for other things. I thought I was choosing a life. I didn't mean to. She gestured at the air, which refused to fill in the right noun. I didn't rescue her from it. "I'm in therapy," I said, "to learn where my boundaries are and why I kept forgiving status jokes that weren't jokes." She nodded, then blinked, like I'd stepped out of my assigned role. "I liked your steadiness," she offered, almost smiling. It made me feel held. Held is a lovely word until you realize the hands are yours. I told her I hoped she found a life that didn't require other people's names to prop it up. We talked logistics. She would send a letter to the leasing office withdrawing any association with my information. She agreed to reimburse fraudulent charges and to acknowledge, in writing, that I had not consented to any joint applications. Carter would draft the language. We did not touch the ring on the table between us. It sat like a small planet no longer in our orbit. Healing is boring and brave. I started sleeping regular hours, bought groceries at normal times, and learned to sit in a chair without checking my phone every 3 minutes. I kept my apartment and fixed the radiator. I took the ring to the jeweler and sold it for enough to cover 2 months' rent and 3 therapy sessions. The clerk wished me luck. I accepted it like water. On Sundays, I walked by the river and counted boats. I called my mother, who cried when I told her I was okay, then laughed when I described freezing a ring like a science experiment. "You always liked the basics," she said. I think she meant dignity without shine. I can live with that. Claire asked if we could try friendship after time and space had passed. People think a betrayal ends when the photos come down. It doesn't. It ends when the story you tell yourself changes shape, and the old one no longer fits, even in the dark. I used to believe love meant absorbing the blow and smiling through the ache. Now I believe love means showing up for yourself when no one is clapping, and choosing facts over fantasies even when the fantasy is kinder for a moment. Dignity is quiet and heavy. It anchors you when the room spins. I learned practical things. Freeze your credit early when a relationship starts dissolving. Document with dates, times, and sources. Speak in the language of the room you're in. Banker to the bank, legalese to the form, plain English to yourself. Ask for witnesses, even if the witness is a notary with ink-smudged fingers. Trust patterns over declarations. If someone calls the basics cute, ask why they're afraid of foundations. Foundations are what keep buildings from falling when fireworks end. I kept working. I got a thank you card from the man whose chest I compressed on the day the rooftop photo dropped. He didn't know he was part of the hinge on which my life turned. He wrote, in block letters, "You kept my heart going." I put the card on my fridge under the same magnet that once held a receipt with initials that weren't mine. Some objects get to stay. Others don't. Claire sent the final reimbursement and the withdrawal letter. Dr. Wells issued a statement about institutional processes and respect for privacy. The city moved on because it always does. On quiet mornings, I drink coffee by the window and watch a dog walker try to negotiate with 4 determined terriers, and I laugh alone, the kind of laugh that belongs to people who know their own names. I don't need a rooftop or a caption to feel real. If you're older and tired and wondering whether keeping the peace is the same as keeping yourself, I can tell you it isn't. Keep yourself. Choose the basics. Practice the protocol of your own dignity until it's muscle memory. Then, when anyone tries to move you like a prop in their photo, you'll already be holding steady. A new message arrived from an unknown number that simply read, "Are you available tonight?"